When I was about 12 years old, I told my mom that I was ready to be confirmed. But I was the only one in our very small parish who would be in the confirmation class. So they decided that I should go to the parish church, a bigger church in Kingston, to join their confirmation class. Now, St. Andrew's Parish Church was built in 1665, and it had a cemetery, and you can imagine what that cemetery looked like, with those huge tombstones, one almost on top of the other, some leaning into each other, gray and faded. Some you would have to really be able to read old English letters in order to read the names and the dates of the people who were buried there. And I was fascinated. I arrived for confirmation class about an hour early because my school dismissed earlier than I guess the other students. And I would spend most of that hour actually walking through the cemetery and reading the markers and trying to think what life was like for these people who lived, some of them hundreds of years before, what it was like for their families who must have mourned the loss, and how it was that they came to be in this place. Last Easter season, I went home to Jamaica, and I actually attended the funeral service of a family friend, someone in my age group. And we went to the burial, which was at a very different place. It was at a memorial park, and it was a very different experience. You can imagine very well manicured lawn and flat tombstones, evenly placed and spaced. And as my brother and I were walking towards the place of the burial, we, as we always do, read the markers as we went. And my brother turned to me and said, "Do you notice that the dates of births are getting closer and closer to ours?" And yes, it was a sort of a moment when you sort of faced your own mortality. But in fact, the idea and the impact of death had changed in the decades since I walked through St. Andrew's Church Cemetery. I now had experience of having lost people who had a great impact in my life. Family members, friends had died. It makes a difference in your whole outlook about death, about life after death. And All Saints has a different meaning. On All Saints' Day or All Saints' Sunday, when you think of the ones who have passed, the ones who are in God's closer presence, you remember stories. You remember their presence. It has more meaning. On this All Saints Sunday, we hear the story of Jesus and Lazarus, friends. And the story actually is told by John in great detail. As a matter of fact, we are just getting a section of this story this morning. Another section is actually read often at funerals. As a matter of fact, at our sister Edna's funeral tomorrow, that will be read. But in this section, we see Jesus actually perform what has to be one of the most spectacular signs in the Gospel of John. Because Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. And it's a moment, a pivotal moment in that gospel, because many come to believe. But also, those who were in opposition to Jesus' ministry are now set on the course to make sure that he is executed. But this morning I'm going to ask you to think of something else that I think is really significant in the gospel that we just heard. I'd like you to hear again what Jesus says after he has raised Lazarus from the dead. He says, "Come out. Come out." It is a command to Lazarus, but as we read scripture all the time, we have to hear what God might be saying to us too. To come out of those places, those safe places that we create so that we are untouched by the worries and the messiness of the world. To come out from under schedules that keep us from doing the things that God may have called us to do. To come out from saying what used to be, what should be, what has never been done before, and to open our hearts and our minds and our eyes to the idea that God is setting before us a new vision of what work looks like in God's kingdom. To come out and be open, to be used for the holy work of God. Because you see, that is the work of saints. And we are all, each and every one of us, saints of God. Because you don't earn sainthood. It is given by grace to each of us. And then we have to step out and get involved in the holy work. Because that's what saints mean. Holy people set aside. That is who we are through baptism. That's who we are through our commitment to God. So hear the first command, to come out and be ready. And the next command is unbind him. You see, Jesus is the Redeemer, the miracle worker, the healer, the one who raises people from the dead, the one who feeds the 5,000. Jesus is the one who reaches out to each and everybody who is on the outside. But Jesus calls us to join him in the work. Unbind him. Be part of the work of liberation with me. Even finish the work of liberation. People are bound by all kinds of things. All kinds of things oppress people in our community. All kinds of things that we as holy people of God can use our time, our talents, and our treasures to unbind. On this All Saints Sunday, even as we think about our loved ones that are now in God's nearer presence, even as we think about people who are still in our midst, who do extraordinary things, who we admire and who we think of as saints, let us not forget that each and every single one of us is a saint, holy person called to do holy things. And let us know that that means that it is not just a way of life, but a way of love. We are called to bring our love, to show it in action in the world around us. Let us ask ourselves on this All Saints' Day, O saints of God, how is it that God is calling us to this holy work? How is it that God can work in us, with us, and through us to be agents of liberation, to be saints in his world? Amen.